those are the numbers that we're familiar with. Now, Punjab have the advantage of the highest purse, 72 crore, right up down to Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai, and Delhi, who have 48 and 47.5 for Delhi. Now, GS, take us through what you've developed as a trajectory as to how the auction may go in the first few sets and how franchises are likely to spend their money. And then I'll get Akash and the rest to react.
So the auction, when you look at the roster, this auction is slightly different. The kind of overseas talent and the Indian talent moving down the roster is pretty ordinary, in the sense that you don't have the kind of players who you think will go for a lot of money. That's what I mean. And Indian players are going to be gold because it's a 10-team auction. It's a completely different dynamics when it comes from 8 to 10. So that's a mindset change. If by doing the math and by just going through the auction list, if you ask me personally, I would almost budget for my first 11. Around 60 to 70 crores, and maybe the bench players, not even the bench, my first 15, 16, I would budget close to 80 crores and just keep a bare minimum for my bench, because the core is very important. If I can get a guy like Deepak Chahar, Shardul Thakur, and get one more Indian and a Chahal, I don't mind spending a lot of money upfront. So if I was sitting in one of the franchises, that's exactly what I would advise. Get all your best players. It's okay. Build your 11, build your 13 players, and then you don't even need a squad of 25. Even if you have a squad of 20, 21, it's good. But say your slots number 16 to 21, I keep it very limited. In fact, I won't be surprised if teams go up to 80, 85 also for the top 15, 16, and just buy a lot of fringe players at the back end and just finish my squad. So that's where I think scouting becomes very important. Find those gems, overseas gems, who can come for say 50 lakhs or maybe 1 crore max, and keep those 4 overseas backups as that, and just go heavy on the Indian guys. I think that it's an auction for the Indians, and you might see that the odd overseas player is going to break the bank, but I would really focus a lot and buy as many players upfront. So just before I give it to Akash, if you look at the 10 marquee names, a lot of people might think 10 will go split across 10 teams, but I think if you ask me, you just get 4 or 5, even one team gets 4 or 5, and just kind of see how the auction pans out. It'll be very interesting. You can upset a lot of strategies because there aren't too many people after 55, 60. For example, if you take overseas all-rounder, I was looking at that list. You have Jason Holder and Mitchell Marsh hardly bowls, and you have Dwayne Bravo, and then your next set comes at around set number 100. Not set number 100, player number 100. So that's like your Dominic Drakes, Jimmy Neesham, Chris Jordan, etc. So literally, I just have like four overseas quicks to kind of pick from, and you have 10 teams. So I don't want to wait for someone. Similarly, with the wrist spinner, there's Chahal and there's Rahul Chahal. I don't want to wait for, if I don't get those two, my next best is a Praveen Dubey or a Pardeep Sahu and maybe Shreyas Gopal. So the gap between the best and the second best is quite big from what I see. So I think you need to be very aggressive at the top, just like a Brendan McCullum would do.
All right, very nice, very eloquently finished by Gaurav Sundaram. And let's get Akash's thoughts. Fair to say, I mean, it's something we can get now. This is going to be an auction for the Indians, but you go with Gaurav's point overall that the quality does dip after 4 or 5 sets.
Oh yes, it does. In fact, forget about the 4 or 5 sets. When you look at the quality generally, there is a lot of demand, and the supply, of course, numbers are there, but quality isn't. So overseas all-rounders, there aren't too many. When you look at the overseas fast bowlers, everybody wants Kagiso Rabada and Trent Bolt. The third best is Lockie Ferguson. I rate him very highly. So maybe just top 3, and then what? Pat Cummins is not your T20 gun bowler. Jofra Archer might come into that accelerator, and you want to just keep money for that. That is a discussion, I think, for later. But there is, yes, lack of quality. So if there is lack of quality, you go with whatever is available. And most teams that have done well in the past have had a great Indian core. So try and get it to get as many Indians as possible, as early as possible, because wrist spinners, I think Gaurav has covered almost everything, and I'm with him that 80-85 crore. Just get your 15 and then see where you go from there.
Dan, when you react to that, we're likely to see a lot of aggression in the first few sets?
I think for the Indian players you will be. I think I wouldn't be surprised if some of the overseas players that are big names may just get a lower price, or they I mean, we've seen in the past that players have passed in, and I think that's where the opportunity lies around grabbing a player early so they actually set up what you can do further on in the auction. But there's going to be 10 teams vying for Indian talent, and that's where you're going to push these franchises to the test, really. I mean, when a player, there's going to be players that come up that all 10 franchises want. And so that is going to be the difficult one when we talk about going hard for a player and then going hard for another player, where you could be asked some very difficult questions early on the auction. And it's the team that I suppose can hold their medal and say, yes, we'll grab 2 players that may cost us 30 crore, and we'll see where we end up in the rest of the auction. But it's those players that have all 10 franchises after them that are going to be fascinating, because you can rule out 2 or 3 franchises from every other player because they've already got that player in their retained 4. So the likes of that overseas fast bowl early on, Chahal is going to be fascinating. I think how aggressive team's going to be for him. I just hope he goes to Ahmedabad so he gets some big boundaries finally.